The first time anyone suspected something was wrong, it was already too late. A warm summer breeze swept through the small town of Willow Creek, rustling the leaves outside the charming cafe on Main Street. Inside, the scent of freshly brewed coffee and warm pastries filled the air. It was the kind of town where everyone knew each other, where secrets were hard to keep. And yet, he had kept his so well. Benjamin Reeves wasn't just liked. He was adored. A striking man in his late 30s, with a disarming smile and eyes that seemed to read people like an open book. He was the kind of man who made strangers feel like old friends, whose laughter could turn a dull evening into a memory worth keeping. He worked in real estate, owned a few rental properties, and was known for his generous donations to local charities. He was charming, kind, successful. But beneath that charm was something much darker. The first woman to go missing was Megan Holloway. She was a 27-year-old kindergarten teacher, loved by her students and respected by her peers. She had been last seen leaving a dinner party at a friend's house. She had texted her sister around 9:30 p.m., saying she was heading home. She never made it there. Her car was found abandoned on the side of Route 16, the driver's side door slightly ajar. Her purse was still inside. Her phone was missing. There were no signs of a struggle, no fingerprints, no clues. The town was shaken. A missing person case like this wasn't common in Willow Creek. People whispered theories in hushed voices. Maybe she ran away. Maybe she had an accident. But those closest to Megan knew better. She wasn't the type to disappear without a word. Something had happened to her. And Benjamin Reeves had been the last person to see her. Detective Eleanor Briggs, a seasoned investigator with a sharp mind and even sharper instincts, was assigned to the case. She had seen disappearances before, some with happy endings, some with tragedies. But something about Megan's case unsettled her. She sat across from Megan's sister, Claire Holloway, in the police station. Claire's hands trembled as she clutched her sister's photo. She wouldn't just leave, Claire insisted, her voice raw. She was happy. She had plans. We were supposed to take a trip to New York next month. Detective Briggs tapped her pen against her notepad. Did she mention anything unusual before she disappeared? A new relationship? A problem at work? Claire hesitated. Then, quietly, she said, there was someone she had been talking to. A man. She mentioned him once or twice, but she didn't say much. Just that he was charming. Briggs narrowed her eyes. Do you have a name? Claire nodded. Ben Reeves. Benjamin Reeves was the town's golden boy. No one wanted to believe he could be involved in anything sinister. When Detective Briggs and her partner, Detective Mark Callahan, arrived at his real estate office, he greeted them with a warm smile and a firm handshake. Detectives, he said smoothly. What can I do for you? We're looking into Megan Holloway's disappearance, Briggs said, watching his face carefully. We understand you knew her. Reeves tilted his head as if searching his memory. Megan. Oh, yes. Lovely girl. I met her at a charity event a few weeks ago. We had coffee once or twice. She was sweet, but I didn't know her very well. His voice was calm. Too calm. And when was the last time you saw her? Callahan asked. Benjamin exhaled, feigning sadness. Maybe a week before she disappeared. We ran into each other at the farmer's market. She seemed happy. He shook his head. I just can't believe she's missing. Briggs studied him. His answers were smooth, practiced. Most people fidgeted under pressure. Most people got nervous when questioned by the police. Not Benjamin Reeves. That was the first red flag. Despite his perfect demeanor, something about him didn't sit right with Briggs. She requested phone records, credit card statements, anything that might tie him to Megan's disappearance. And then they found it. Surveillance footage from a gas station outside of town. At 10:17 p.m. on the night Megan disappeared, Benjamin Reeves' car had been caught on camera. Driving in the direction of the remote woodland area just off Route 16. The same area where Megan's car had been found abandoned. Briggs and Callahan drove out to the location the next morning. The dense forest loomed over them as they walked through the overgrown path. It didn't take long to find something disturbing. A scarf. Torn. Stained. Megan's sister identified it immediately. That's hers, Claire whispered, her voice breaking. Briggs turned to Callahan. We need a warrant. 2 days later, police executed a search warrant on Benjamin Reeves' home. At first, it looked normal. Too normal. Until they found the basement. The room was soundproofed. The walls lined with photographs, pictures of Megan, of other women, all taken from a distance. And then, in a locked cabinet, they found something even worse. A collection of driver's licenses. Jewelry. Personal items. None of them belonged to Megan. Briggs' blood ran cold. He's done this before. Just as she turned to call it in. A sound. A creak. And then, the lights cut out. Darkness swallowed the basement. Detective Eleanor Briggs froze, her heart hammering in her chest. The single light bulb that had flickered overhead was gone, plunging her and Detective Mark Callahan into a suffocating black void. Then, a sound. A slow, deliberate creak from somewhere upstairs. Someone was in the house. Briggs reached for her gun, her grip tightening. Callahan, she whispered, but she already knew he had drawn his weapon, too. They weren't alone. Footsteps. Slow. Measured. Moving toward the basement door. Then, silence. Briggs swallowed hard. We need backup. Callahan nodded, reaching for his radio. But before he could say a word. Bang! The basement door slammed shut above them, sealing them inside. They were trapped. Briggs' pulse raced. He's here. They had searched this house from top to bottom. Or so they thought. Somehow, Benjamin Reeves had slipped through their fingers. And now, they were his next targets. Briggs moved fast, flashlight in one hand, gun in the other. She scanned the darkened basement, her eyes landing on the disturbing display of women's belongings they had just uncovered. The driver's licenses. The torn pieces of clothing. The locks of hair. This wasn't just a killer's hideout. It was a trophy room. And Benjamin Reeves had been collecting for a long, long time. Briggs. Callahan's voice was low, urgent. He was near the back of the basement, where a second door stood slightly ajar. A draft seeped through the crack. An exit. But before they could reach it, footsteps thundered down the basement stairs. Briggs turned, gun raised, just as a shadow lunged toward them. Callahan fired first. A deafening shot rang out, echoing through the basement. The shadow staggered back. Briggs grabbed Callahan's arm. Go! They bolted through the back door, emerging into the night. Cool air filled Briggs' lungs as they sprinted toward the patrol car parked outside. Behind them, the house stood silent. Still. As if Benjamin Reeves had never been there at all. By the time backup arrived, Benjamin Reeves had vanished. Briggs paced outside the house, her mind racing. He was here. He had been right in front of them. And now? Now he is gone. Callahan ran a hand through his hair. We had him, Briggs. Her jaw clenched. He played us. This was never his real home. It's a hunting ground. They had just stepped into a killer's carefully crafted illusion. And he had walked away clean. Over the next 48 hours, forensic teams combed through Reeves' property. What they found made the town's blood run cold. Bloodstains, old, cleaned, but still there, soaked into the basement floor. A hidden compartment behind the wall, filled with videotapes. Each tape labeled with a different woman's name. And then, the final blow. Megan Holloway's name was on the most recent tape. Briggs' stomach churned as she watched the footage. Megan, sitting in a chair, bound at the wrists. Crying. Pleading. And Benjamin Reeves, standing over her, smiling. Then, darkness. The tape ended. Willow Creek was no longer a quiet town. It was a town in fear. Benjamin Reeves' face was everywhere. News stations, social media, wanted posters on every street corner. But he was gone. And the body count? It was rising. Because Megan Holloway wasn't the only one. Another woman was missing. Lisa Whitmore, 32 years old. Last seen 2 days ago. The realization hit Briggs like a freight train. Reeves wasn't running. He was still hunting. Somewhere, in the dead of night, Lisa Whitmore opened her eyes. Her head throbbed. The room around her was dark, unfamiliar. Her wrists burned, tied. And then, a voice. Smooth. Charming. Shoo, you don't have to be afraid. Lisa's breath hitched. She knew that voice. Benjamin Reeves. He knelt beside her, tilting his head as he studied her. You're special, he murmured. Just like the others. Tears welled in Lisa's eyes. She struggled against the restraints, her pulse hammering. Reeves only smiled. You'll see, he whispered. And then, he turned off the light. Lisa Whitmore's screams were swallowed by the thick concrete walls. She yanked at the restraints cutting into her wrists, her pulse hammering against her ribs. The darkness was suffocating. Then, footsteps. Slow. Unhurried. The door creaked open. A sliver of dim, yellow light spilled into the room. And there he was. Benjamin Reeves. Dressed in his usual crisp button-down, his hair neatly combed, his smile as charming as ever. "Lisa," he murmured, stepping closer. "You're awake." Lisa pressed her back against the chair, trying to make herself small. His green eyes gleamed. "Don't be afraid." But Lisa knew better. Fear was the only thing keeping her alive. Detective Eleanor Briggs hadn't slept in 36 hours. She sat in front of the evidence board, her fingers curled around a cup of stale coffee. Every second that passed was a second closer to another dead body. Lisa Whitmore had been missing for 3 days. And just like Megan Holloway before her, the chances of finding her alive were slipping away. Callahan leaned against the desk beside her. "We need a lead, Briggs. Something. Anything." Briggs swallowed hard. "We already have one." She turned to the board, tapping the grainy surveillance photo of Reeves. "Benjamin Reeves doesn't kill and run. He's still here." They had spent weeks chasing Reeves across state lines. But what if he had never left? What if he was right under their noses the whole time? Briggs grabbed a marker and circled the Dawson Motel on the map pinned to the board. "He's comfortable in this town. He blends in. And he's meticulous. He plans every move." Callahan frowned. "You think he's staying somewhere nearby?" Briggs nodded. "Not a house. That would be too obvious. But a motel?" She gestured to the map. "This one is cash only, no security cameras. It's the perfect hideout." Callahan straightened. "Then let's pay it a visit." The sign flickered, barely clinging to life. The Dawson Motel looked like it hadn't been updated in decades. Briggs and Callahan approached the front desk. A tired-looking clerk barely glanced at them. Briggs flashed her badge. "We need to see your guest records." The clerk sighed, flipping through a tattered ledger. "What's this about?" "A man named Benjamin Reeves." The clerk hesitated. "Never heard of him." Briggs got twisted. She pulled a photo from her folder and slid it across the counter. "What about him?" The clerk's face paled. "Room 12. They moved fast. Guns drawn, hearts pounding. Room 12's door was locked. Callahan kicked it in. The room was empty. Neatly made bed. An untouched glass of water on the nightstand. But the air felt wrong. Like someone had been here. Recently." Briggs stepped forward, her gaze sweeping across the room. And then she saw it. On the nightstand, propped up like a gift, was a videotape. Her stomach dropped. Lisa Whitmore's name was written across it. Back at the station, the room was dead silent as the tape played. Lisa was tied to a chair. Her eyes were wide, swollen from crying. And Benjamin Reeves? He was behind her, whispering in her ear. Briggs' blood ran cold. "This isn't just a trophy," she muttered. "It's a message." Then, as if on cue, Reeves turned toward the camera. Smiling. And he spoke directly to them. "Detective Briggs. I knew you'd come looking." Briggs clenched her jaw. Reeves tilted his head. "But you're too late. The clock is ticking." Then, the screen went black. Briggs shot up from her chair. "He's playing with us." Callahan's face was grim. "And we're running out of time." Lisa Whitmore was still alive, but for how long? Reeves wanted them to chase him. He wanted them to play. Briggs exhaled sharply. "Then let's change the game." If Reeves thought he was in control, he was about to find out just how wrong he was. The air in the precinct was thick with tension. Every officer moved with urgency, every phone call carried weight. The tape Reeves left behind was a declaration of war. Lisa Whitmore was alive, but for how long? Detective Eleanor Briggs stood at the center of it all, her jaw clenched, her fingers tapping restlessly against the case files. "He's taunting us," Callahan muttered, arms crossed as he stared at the static-filled screen where Reeves' face had last appeared. "This guy thinks he's untouchable." Briggs exhaled, steadying herself. "Then it's time we prove him wrong." But deep down, she knew Benjamin Reeves wasn't just some run-of-the-mill killer. He was always one step ahead. And if they weren't careful, someone else was going to die. Lisa's wrists were raw from struggling against the restraints. The cold metal bit into her skin, each breath sending sharp pain through her ribs. She had lost track of time. Hours? Days? All she knew was him. Reeves moved around her like a phantom, never raising his voice, never showing anger. Only that smile. It was worse than any scream. "Lisa," he murmured, crouching beside her. His fingers grazed the bruise on her cheek. "I need you to trust me." She flinched. His smile widened. "Don't worry. It'll all be over soon." Tears burned in Lisa's eyes. Somewhere, deep inside, she still held onto one fragile hope. Briggs would come for her. But would she be too late? Back at the station, Briggs replayed the video over and over. Every frame. Every word. And then she saw it. A reflection. In the corner of the screen, barely visible, a cracked mirror. She zoomed in. Her pulse jumped. The pattern on the wallpaper, the chipped wooden beams. This isn't just some random basement, she whispered. I've seen this before. Callahan leaned over her shoulder. Where? Briggs grabbed a file from the pile and flipped it open. A crime scene photo. The Holloway murder. Reeves' first confirmed kill. Her stomach dropped. This sick bastard took Lisa back to where it all started. The road was nothing more than a winding dirt path, barely visible beneath the overgrown brush. Briggs and Callahan gripped their guns, their boots crunching against dead leaves. The house loomed ahead, its wooden structure warped with time. Briggs' heart pounded. They had backup on the way. SWAT. Helicopters. Everything. But she knew Reeves. By the time they got here, he'd be gone. Or worse, Lisa would be. She wasn't willing to take that risk. Callahan's voice was low. We going fast. No hesitation. Briggs nodded. No turning back. This ended tonight. The door creaked as they pushed inside. Darkness swallowed them whole. The stench of mildew and rotting wood clung to the air. Then, a muffled cry. Briggs' pulse spiked. She moved first, gun raised, following the sound through the narrow hallway. Lisa. She was tied to a chair in the center of the room, her breath shaky, her body weak. Briggs rushed forward. Lisa, it's me. We're getting you out of here. Lisa's tear-filled eyes locked onto hers. And then widened in horror. Detective, behind you. Briggs spun just as a figure emerged from the shadows. Reeves. His green eyes gleamed with amusement. Well, he said smoothly. Looks like the great Detective Briggs finally caught up. Her finger hovered over the trigger. It's over, Reeves. His smirk never faltered. Is it? Briggs' stomach twisted. Something was wrong. And then she saw it. A wire running from the chair Lisa sat in, straight to a detonator in Reeves' hand. Her blood ran cold. Let her go, she demanded. Reeves tilted his head. I could, but where's the fun in that? Briggs' mind raced. One wrong move, and Lisa would die. But if she hesitated, Reeves would win. She had seconds to decide. Tick. 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 The station was in chaos. Officers scrambled, weapons drawn, shouting over one another as the emergency lights flickered a haunting red. Benjamin Reeves had escaped. Briggs stood frozen, her mind trying to process the impossible. How? 1 minute he was sitting in that chair, smiling at her. The next, gone. Callahan was already barking orders. Lock down every exit. He couldn't have gotten far. But deep down, Briggs knew. He was already gone. Security footage showed exactly what Briggs feared. At 9:47 p.m., the lights flickered. For precisely 4 seconds, every camera in the precinct cut out. When they came back on, Reeves was no longer in the interrogation room. Instead, a lone officer lay slumped against the hallway wall, his gun missing. Briggs gritted her teeth. He planned this. Every move. Callahan clenched his fists. No way he did this alone. Briggs exhaled sharply. We need to figure out who helped him, and fast. Because Reeves wasn't the type to run. He was the type to come back. Lisa Carter sat in a safe house, staring blankly at the television screen. She wasn't watching. She was waiting. She knew Reeves would come for her. And when the news broke about his escape, she felt her stomach drop. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone, dialing Briggs. He's not done, she whispered, her voice hollow. He's coming for me. Briggs' response was immediate. We're on our way. Lisa's breath hitched as she turned toward the living room window. The curtain moved. Her heart pounded. She wasn't alone. Briggs and Callahan sped toward Lisa's location, sirens cutting through the night. We should have killed him when we had the chance, Callahan muttered. Briggs didn't disagree. They screeched to a stop outside the safe house, weapons drawn as they rushed inside. Lisa? Briggs called out. Silence. Then, a crash upstairs. They took the stairs 2 at a time, bursting into the bedroom. And found Lisa huddled in the corner, shaking. But she wasn't looking at them. She was looking at the words written on the mirror in deep red ink. You took your shot, Briggs. Now it's my turn. Callahan cursed. He's taunting us. Briggs' grip tightened on her gun. Not for long. Because this time, she wasn't waiting for him to make his move. She was going to end it. The city was eerily quiet as Briggs and Callahan moved through the abandoned warehouse, their guns drawn. This was where Reeves wanted them to be. They knew it was a trap. But they didn't care. A single light flickered ahead. And then, he was there. Benjamin Reeves stood in the center of the room, arms crossed, smirking like the devil himself. Briggs' jaw clenched. "It's over, Reeves." He chuckled. "Oh, detective. You always think you're in control." Callahan stepped forward. "Hands where we can see them." Reeves didn't move. Instead, he tilted his head. "I have one last trick." Briggs barely had time to process his words before. Boom. The explosion ripped through the warehouse. Smoke filled the air. The world tilted as Briggs hit the ground, ears ringing. Flames danced along the walls. A shadow moved through the haze. "Reeves." Briggs reached for her gun, but Reeves was already gone, vanished into the night like a ghost. Callahan groaned beside her. "Did we get him?" Briggs exhaled sharply, staring at the destruction around them. Nobody. No sign. Just a single, chilling message scrawled onto the concrete wall. "See you soon, detective." Her hands curled into fists. Because she knew the truth. Benjamin Reeves was still out there. And this game? It wasn't over.